Imagine being a teenager excited to fly in the VIP section of a private jet, feeling special and valued. Now imagine being asked to give up those seats not because someone else had a reservation, but simply because of the color of your skin. This is exactly what happened to Maya and Malik, black teen siblings who were enjoying a family trip, when a flight attendant demanded they move to the back of the plane. What seemed like a simple, unfair request quickly turned into a moment of humiliation. But instead of accepting it quietly, Maya and Malik made one phone call, a call to their dad, Jonathan Carter, a powerful CEO who doesn't tolerate injustice. What happened next rocked everyone on board, led to the firing of the entire crew, and sparked a wave of change far beyond the skies. This story isn't just about VIP seats, it's about courage, family, and standing up against discrimination when it matters most. Stay with us to find out how this moment of injustice turned into a powerful movement. It was a bright, sunny afternoon when Maya and Malik Carter arrived at the private airstrip. The twins, both 16 years old, had been looking forward to this trip for weeks. Their family was going away for the weekend to a luxurious lakeside resort, and they were thrilled to escape the busy city. Boarding the sleek, gleaming private jet felt like stepping into a dream. The plane was impressive. Its polished white body gleamed under the sunlight, and the spacious cabin promised comfort and exclusivity. Their dad, Jonathan Carter, was a man who rarely flew commercial. As the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the country, he was used to the finer things in life. Jonathan had made sure his family was taken care of, and flying private was just one of the many perks they enjoyed. Maya and Malik loved this part of their lives. The freedom, the luxury, the sense that they belonged somewhere special. Today, they were to sit in the VIP section, right behind the cockpit, with wide leather seats that reclined fully in personal entertainment screens. It was their favorite spot. Maya adjusted her seatbelt and glanced over at Malik, who was already watching the stewardess with a smile. Plane was quiet except for the low hum of the engines starting up. The other passengers, mostly family friends and their security team, chatted softly, excited for the weekend ahead. Everything seemed perfect. Suddenly, a flight attendant approached the twins. Her expression was polite but firm. "Excuse me, but those seats are reserved for some important guests. You'll need to move to the back." Maya froze, her heart skipping a beat. "Wait, what?" she asked, blinking in disbelief. "But we're already here, and these are our seats. They were assigned to us." The attendant's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Rules are rules. The front seats have been reassigned. You'll need to take seats further back." Malik exchanged a quick glance with his sister. His face tightened. He had heard stories before, stories about people being pushed aside, ignored, or treated differently for reasons they couldn't control. But this was his family's private flight. This was their trip. Why should they have to move? Maya's mind raced. The twins had always been proud of their dad's success, but sometimes, despite all the wealth and power, the world still had its ugly moments. Was this one of them? Were they being singled out just because they were black? It wasn't the first time Maya had felt eyes on her that weren't friendly. But here, in their dad's jet, she thought they'd be safe. The flight attendant's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Please understand, the decision came from above. We have guests with very high profiles boarding last minute. You need to cooperate." Maya's fingers tightened around the armrest. "Who are these guests? Why wasn't this told to us earlier?" The attendant hesitated, then glanced away. "I'm not at liberty to say." Malik stood up slowly. "This doesn't feel right." He said quietly, "We booked these seats, just like always." At that moment, one of the security personnel nearby stepped forward. He was a tall man with a serious expression, but he said nothing. The room suddenly felt colder. Other passengers started whispering, casting furtive looks at the twins. Maya swallowed hard. She felt a mixture of anger and embarrassment bubbling inside her chest. The luxurious leather beneath her fingers suddenly felt like cold stone. They were being asked to leave as if they were less than the others on the plane. Malik pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. "Maybe we should call Dad," he said softly. Maya shook her head, unsure. "Would he even come? We don't want to make a scene." Malik gave her a steady look. "He won't let this slide. You know that." The flight attendant watched the twins carefully. "Please pack your things and move to the back row. This is a final request." Maya glanced around. Some of the other passengers avoided eye contact. Others gave sympathetic looks. But no one stepped in. As Maya and Malik gathered their belongings, the twins' minds raced with questions. Why were they being singled out on a plane that was supposed to be their safe space? Who had decided this, and more importantly, what would happen next? Malik offered Maya a small smile as they made their way down the aisle, but she could see the tension in his jaw. The twins knew their dad was powerful, a man who could move mountains with a single phone call. But this felt different. This wasn't just about a few lost seats. It was a message, a reminder that even with all their privilege, prejudice could still reach them. As they reached the back of the plane, Maya settled into the cramped, narrow seats far from the front, her heart heavy. She looked out the window at the bright sky, wondering how a simple flight had turned into a moment they would never forget. Maya and Malik moved quietly down the aisle, their footsteps light but heavy with the weight of humiliation. The seats at the back of the plane were cramped and uncomfortable, narrow rows with stiff fabric and barely enough legroom. It was a stark contrast to the spacious, plush leather seats they had been asked to give up. Around them the atmosphere shifted. Passengers whispered softly, casting curious glances their way. Some looked on with sympathy, others seemed indifferent or even amused. But Maya and Malik felt the sting of being singled out, as if their presence there was a mistake. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she buckled into the new seat, the cool plastic armrest feeling foreign against her skin. Malik sat beside her, his face calm but his eyes sharp and alert. Neither of them spoke at first. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken frustration and disbelief. This wasn't just about seats anymore. It was about respect, or the lack of it. For a moment, Maya wanted to say something, to protest loudly and demand answers, but the tension in the cabin made her hesitate. The flight attendant had been clear, and the other passengers were watching. She could feel the weight of their stares like 1,000 tiny pinpricks. Malik, however, wasn't willing to accept this quietly. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The glow of the screen lit up his determined face. "I'm going to call Dad," he said quietly but firmly. Maya looked at him and nodded. Their dad, Jonathan Carter, had always taught them to stand up for themselves, to never let anyone treat them unfairly without speaking up. It was a lesson they had practiced many times, but this moment felt more intense, more personal. Malik unlocked his phone and tapped Jonathan's contact. Phone rang once, twice, then connected. Malik handed the device to Maya. "You talk. Tell him what happened." Maya took a deep breath, steadying her voice. She began explaining the situation calmly and clearly, how they had been seated in the VIP section, how the flight attendant had approached and told them to move, how they had been pushed to the back without any explanation except vague references to important guests. On the other end of the call, their father's voice was steady, authoritative, but laced with concern. "Stay right where you are. I'm on my way." Maya felt a surge of relief and strength from those words. She looked at Malik, who gave her a small, encouraging smile. Though they were sitting in those cramped seats, their fight wasn't over. Far from it, around them the cabin continued its quiet buzz. Some passengers were starting to notice the call, whispering about the Carter family and their influence. But Maya and Malik ignored the murmurs. This was their moment to stand firm. As they waited, Maya's thoughts drifted back to all the times they had faced challenges before. Being twins, they had always supported each other through thick and thin. But this was different. This was public. This was a reminder that no matter how much success their family had, prejudice still lingered beneath the surface in places they least expected. Malik leaned back, his fingers tapping nervously on the armrest. "You think Dad will actually come?" he asked quietly. Maya shrugged but nodded. "He always does." Minutes passed, feeling like hours. The twins sat side by side, silent but united. Neither spoke much, words felt unnecessary. Their quiet presence at the back of the plane was itself a protest, a refusal to disappear or be ignored. Meanwhile, the crew exchanged uneasy glances. They could feel the tension rising, knowing that their decision was being challenged by the powerful Carter family. The atmosphere shifted, thickening with anticipation. Maya glanced out the window, watching the clouds drift lazily by. The sky outside was calm, a sharp contrast to the storm brewing inside the cabin. She whispered to Malik, "We're not just kids. We deserve to be treated with respect wherever we are." Malik nodded, squeezing her hand. "Exactly, and we have Dad on our side." Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the aisle. Heads turned as their father, Jonathan Carter, entered the cabin. The once silent atmosphere erupted with whispers and gasps. The CEO presence commanded attention. His tall frame, sharp suit, and confident stride made it clear this was no ordinary passenger. Meyer and Malik sat up straighter, hope rising in their chests. Jonathan approached, looking directly at his children. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Maya nodded, steadying her voice. "They asked us to give up our seats for no reason." Jonathan's eyes narrowed. "That's not acceptable, not on my watch." The silent protest was about to change everything. The sound of firm footsteps echoed through the cabin, causing a sudden hush to fall over everyone on board. Heads turned toward the entrance, where Jonathan Carter, CEO of Carter Tech and father to Maya and Malik, stepped into the plane with unmistakable authority. The atmosphere shifted instantly. No one had expected the company's powerful leader to intervene personally over a seating dispute, especially on a private flight. Yet here he was, his presence alone demanding attention. Jonathan's eyes scanned the cabin sharply as he made his way down the aisle. Flight attendants straightened nervously, and the murmurs died down to silence. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances, sensing that something serious was about to unfold. The contrast between the smooth luxury of the jet's interior and the tense energy was palpable. When Jonathan reached the twins, he stopped directly in front of them. His expression was serious, but concern softened the edges of his gaze as he looked at Maya and Malik. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly, his voice calm but firm. Maya looked up at her dad, her eyes steady despite the discomfort they'd just endured. She nodded but leaned closer, whispering so only he could hear, "We were asked to give up our seats for other passengers." Jonathan's jaw clenched tightly, the hint of a frown forming. "That's unacceptable," he said firmly. "You had your seats reserved. No one has the right to force you out without a proper explanation." He turned sharply toward the head flight attendant, who stood nearby, looking suddenly very small and nervous under his intense gaze. "Who authorized this?" Jonathan demanded. The attendant swallowed hard, shuffling her papers. "Sir, there was a mix-up. Some VIP guests arrived last minute and needed the seats in the front. We were asked to accommodate them." Jonathan's eyes narrowed, and his voice dropped to a controlled but cold tone. "I don't accept excuses. This isn't a mix-up. This is discrimination, plain and simple. You targeted my children because of who they are." The attendant's face paled. "Sir, I assure you, that was never the intention." Jonathan shook his head slowly, his voice rising just enough to be heard clearly by the entire cabin. "Intentions don't matter when actions cause harm. My children have every right to those seats. You have disrespected them, and by extension me." A tense silence followed. The rest of the crew exchanged worried looks. They had underestimated Jonathan's reaction and the consequences that were coming. Jonathan's gaze swept the cabin, making sure everyone understood the gravity of the situation. "This kind of behavior cannot be tolerated. I'm here to ensure it stops immediately." Turning back to Maya and Malik, he softened his tone, kneeling slightly to meet their eyes. "I'm sorry you had to go through this. No one should ever feel less than they deserve." Malik swallowed hard, the lump in his throat growing. "Thanks, Dad." Jonathan stood up and faced the crew again. "I will be making calls as soon as we land. There will be an investigation, and I expect full cooperation." The head attendant tried to speak, but Jonathan held up his hand. "No more excuses. You will treat every passenger with respect, regardless of their background or status." Passengers who had been quietly watching the exchange started murmuring again, this time with a mix of surprise and admiration. Several leaned forward, whispering about the twins' father and his reputation for zero tolerance toward injustice. One of the security personnel approached Jonathan cautiously. "Sir, should we prepare to remove the crew upon landing?" Jonathan nodded curtly. "Yes, this behavior is unacceptable in any situation, especially on a flight that should be safe and welcoming for my family." Meyer and Malik sat straighter in their seats, relief washing over them. Their father's arrival had shifted the balance. What had started as a humiliating experience was now being taken seriously, and justice felt closer than ever. As Jonathan spoke quietly with the cabin crew, the twins exchanged looks, a mixture of hope, gratitude, and determination. They knew the battle wasn't over, but for the first time since boarding the plane, they felt empowered. Malik leaned toward Maya and whispered, "Dad always knows what to do." Maya smiled softly, wiping a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "He's our hero." The plane continued taxiing toward the runway, but the atmosphere had changed completely. This was no longer just a flight. It was the beginning of a stand against discrimination, led by a father who refused to back down. As the plane touched down and the wheels rolled smoothly onto the runway, Jonathan Carter's mind was already racing. The battle hadn't ended in the air, it was only just beginning. His fierce protective instinct kicked in the moment he saw his children's hurt faces on that flight. Now, back on solid ground, Jonathan was determined to get to the bottom of what had happened. Once the family had disembarked, Jonathan immediately called a meeting with his executive team and security advisors. His office buzzed with activity as they began gathering every piece of information related to the flight. Jonathan wasn't one to leave things to chance. He wanted facts, and he wanted answers fast. Within hours, an internal investigation was underway. Emails, messages, flight logs, and crew schedules were reviewed with a fine-tooth comb. What the investigation uncovered was shocking, but, unfortunately, not entirely surprising. Several crew members had been involved in a coordinated effort to target Maya and Malik because of their race. It wasn't an accidental mix-up, as the flight attendant had claimed. It was deliberate. The investigation revealed that certain members of the crew had resented the Carter family's presence on the plane and decided to make a statement by pushing the twins to the back, away from the VIP section where they belonged. The intent was clear: to humiliate and remind the family that, in their eyes, Meyer and Malik did not deserve the privileges that came with their father's success. Jonathan's face darkened as he read through the findings. This was more than discrimination. It was a calculated act of disrespect and prejudice, hidden beneath the guise of protocol. He knew he had to act swiftly and decisively to send a message that such behavior would never be tolerated. That very night, Jonathan made his decision. The entire flight crew involved, from the flight attendants to the supervisors who allowed this to happen, were fired immediately. The news spread quickly through the company and the aviation staff. Jonathan wanted to ensure that everyone knew the consequences of such discrimination were severe and non-negotiable. But Jonathan didn't stop there. He knew the world was watching, and the incident was too important to keep quiet. His company's communications team worked late into the night to prepare a press release. Early the next morning, it was issued publicly. The statement was clear and strong. Carter Tech condemns discrimination in all its forms and pledges to lead by example in fostering equality, respect, and inclusion. The company will hold accountable anyone who undermines these values, regardless of their position. The press release sparked immediate attention. News outlets picked up the story of Maya and Malik, the twins who were asked to give up their VIP seats on a private jet, and how their father had fought back to protect them. Social media exploded with reactions. Messages of support, outrage, and calls for change flooded in from around the world. Meyer and Malik found themselves at the center of a growing movement. At first, it was overwhelming. Their phones buzzed nonstop with notifications. messages from strangers who admired their courage and resilience. Hashtags with their names trended on Twitter. Influencers and activists shared the story, sparking widespread conversations about race, privilege, and the everyday battles faced by Black families, even those with wealth and influence. Maya's Instagram account was flooded with supportive comments. People praised her for standing up calmly and speaking out. Malik's Twitter feed became a platform for sharing experiences of discrimination and solidarity. For the first time, their private pain had become a powerful voice for others. The twins felt a mixture of emotions. They were proud of their dad's swift action and the support pouring in, but they also felt the weight of responsibility. Their story had become more than just a personal injustice. It was now part of a larger fight against systemic racism and prejudice. One evening, as Maya scrolled through the messages on her phone, she paused on a comment from a young girl who wrote, "Thank you for showing me it's okay to speak up. I'm going to be brave like you." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes. In that moment, she understood that their experience, painful as it was, had inspired others to believe in their own strength. Jonathan watched his children carefully during this time. He was proud of how poised and courageous they remained despite the attention and scrutiny. He reminded them that the real victory wasn't in firing the crew or making headlines. It was in changing minds and hearts. In the weeks that followed, the company introduced new training programs focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, ensuring all employees understood the importance of respect in every interaction. Jonathan personally oversaw these efforts, making it clear this wasn't just damage control. It was a commitment to lasting change. For Maya and Malik, the ordeal had been painful, but it had also shown them the power of speaking out. They had started a conversation that was bigger than themselves, and with their dad's support, they were ready to keep fighting for fairness and respect wherever they went. Just when the dust seemed to be settling and the story of the twins' ordeal was fading from the headlines, Jonathan Carter's phone rang again, this time with a call that neither he nor his family had anticipated. The voice on the other end was calm but serious. "Mr. Carter, this is Thomas Reynolds, CEO of Meridian Air. I want to speak with you in person. It's urgent." Jonathan's brow furrowed. Meridian Air was the airline operating the private jet that had caused so much pain and controversy. He wasn't sure what to expect, but something in the tone told him this wasn't just a routine call. Within a day, Jonathan found himself sitting in a sleek, modern office overlooking the city skyline, facing Thomas Reynolds across a polished mahogany desk. The atmosphere was charged with tension and anticipation. "I want to start by sincerely apologizing," Thomas began, his voice heavy with regret. "What happened to your children on our flight was unacceptable, and I am deeply sorry for the pain it caused." Jonathan nodded slowly. He had expected the apology. It was the right thing to do, but what came next surprised him. "We've reviewed the situation extensively," Thomas continued, "and we realize that this isn't just about a few individuals making poor decisions. It's a reflection of systemic problems in our company's culture and policies. That's why I'm here with a proposal." Jonathan's eyes narrowed, leaning forward slightly. "We want you, the Carter family, to join our board of directors," Thomas said, "to help us completely overhaul how Meridian Air operates. We need your guidance to develop real change, to create a culture of respect, inclusion, and accountability from the top down." Jonathan was taken aback. This was unexpected. To be asked not only for forgiveness but for partnership to help shape the future of an entire airline was a monumental opportunity. He looked out the window for a moment, weighing the offer. Then he glanced back at Thomas and said, "This isn't just about business. It's about making sure no one else has to go through what Maya and Malik did. I'm willing to help, but only if real change happens." Thomas nodded, relief and determination shining in his eyes. "That's exactly what we want. Your voice and your family's experience are vital to ensuring this never happens again." Later that day, Jonathan called Maya and Malik. He told them about the meeting, the apology, and the unexpected offer. The twins looked at their father, eyes wide with disbelief and excitement. From the moment they had been asked to give up their VIP seats, to this moment of being invited to lead change at the highest level. Their journey had taken a powerful turn. Maya smiled, squeezing her dad's hand, who knew our fight would lead to this. Malik grinned, we're making a difference. Jonathan pulled them both close. This is just the beginning, he said firmly. Our courage, your courage, has sparked something bigger than us. Together, we'll help build a better future. As the weeks passed, the Carters began working closely with Meridian Air's leadership. Meyer and Malik shared their personal stories in company workshops, putting faces to the issues of discrimination and bias. Jonathan helped develop training programs and policies that promoted diversity and zero tolerance for prejudice. The airline started to change not just on paper but in everyday interactions. Employees were held accountable and passengers noticed the difference. What once was a story of humiliation had transformed into a story of hope, progress, and healing. At home, Meyer and Malik felt a renewed sense of purpose. Their experience had shown them the power of standing up, not just for themselves, but for everyone facing injustice. They knew their voices mattered. One evening, as the family sat together watching the sunset, Jonathan looked at his children with pride. You turned a painful moment into a movement. Remember that. Change starts with courage, and you've shown plenty of that. Maya nodded, her eyes shining. We'll keep fighting for respect, for fairness, for all of us. Malik smiled, and we'll never give up our seats no matter what. Jonathan laughed softly. Exactly. Their story had begun with an unfair demand to give up their VIP seats, but it ended with a powerful message. Courage can change lives, even the future of an entire airline. Meyer and Malik's experience shows us how important it is to stand up against unfair treatment, no matter where it happens. Sometimes just one brave action can change the whole story, not only for ourselves but for many others too. Their dad's support and quick action made sure justice was served, but it was the twins' courage that started the entire movement. This story reminds us that respect and fairness must always come first, and no one should ever feel less just because of who they are. Thanks for watching this powerful story about courage, family, and standing up for what's right. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories every week. Have you ever witnessed or faced something unfair like Maya and Malik? Share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay strong and keep believing in yourself.